There are two completely different ways to buy church insurance, and on the surface, they can look almost identical, but behind the scenes, one gives you options and the other locks you into a single answer. And here's the problem. Most churches make this decision based on price or convenience or just whoever they happen to talk to first. But the way you buy your insurance doesn't really matter until something changes, until underwriting comes back with something you don't agree with, until you have a claim, until you actually need help. That's when this decision shows up in a very real way. Because if you're set up the wrong way, you can end up feeling stuck. Like you don't have options, like no one can actually fix the problem and you're just being told why it is the way it is. But if you're set up with the right way, you have clarity, you have control, and you have someone who can actually go to work for you. So what actually changes between these two paths and when does it really matter? In this video, I'll show you how working with a broker versus going direct actually impacts your day-to-day, what really happens when you need help or run into a problem, and how to know which option is the right fit for your church before you make a decision. Now, before we get into that, let's walk through a really simple scenario. Let's say something goes wrong at your church. Maybe it's a claim, maybe it's a coverage issue. Maybe underwriting comes back with something you don't agree with. So you pick up the phone and you call your insurance company and you get someone on the line. They're helpful. They explain what's going on. But at the end of the conversation, nothing actually changes. They can't go anywhere else. They can't bring you another option. All they can really do is explain why things are the way they are. Now compare that to calling someone whose job it is to go out into the market for you. They can help you make sure you still have the best price, and if it isn't the best price, figure out what options you have. That right there, that's the difference we're talking about in this video. So now that you can see how this plays out in a real situation, let's define what we're actually talking about, because this is where a lot of confusion comes in. There are two primary ways churches buy insurance. The first is working directly with an insurance company. This is what's called a captive agent. That agent represents one company and only one company. So when you call them, when you work with them, when you're asking for options, everything they do is tied to that one insurance company. Now, the reason this model exists and works is because it can be very cost effective. There's no middleman. The company controls the distribution. They can lower commissions, reduce overhead, and sometimes pass those savings along to you. And in certain situations, especially with a specialized program, that can be a really good fit. But there's a trade-off, because no matter how good that one product is, it's still just one option. Now, on the other side, you have an independent broker or agency. Instead of representing one company, they represent multiple. Their job is to go out into the marketplace, gather options, and bring those back to you. So instead of one answer, you're getting a range of answers. And here's an important point, because this trips people up all the time. You'll hear agents like agent, broker, producer, and they all kind of get used interchangeably. But what actually matters is simple. Do they have access to one market or multiple? Because that one detail is what drives everything we're talking about in this video. And on paper, both of these paths can get you an insurance policy. But where things really start to separate is what happens after that. Now, this is where the biggest difference shows up, because everything we just talked about, it sounds nice in theory, but you don't really feel it until something goes wrong. Now, I've been in a lot of these situations with churches. Something comes up. Maybe underwriting changes their appetite. Maybe there's a coverage issue. Maybe something just doesn't make sense and the church is trying to figure out what to do next. If you're working direct, here's typically what happens. You call your agent. They explain what underwriting is doing. They walk you through the reasoning. And to be fair, they may do a really good job explaining it. But at the end of the day, they don't have anywhere else to go. They don't have another market. They don't have a way to create leverage. They don't have a way to go get you a different answer. So the entire experience becomes, let me help you understand why this is happening. Now, compare that to the broker side. When something doesn't work, the job isn't to just explain it. The job is to go fix it. That might mean going back to the same carrier and repositioning the account. It might mean going out to the broader market and finding a different option. It might mean creating competition so carriers have to sharpen their pencil. But the point is, you have movement, you have leverage, you have options, and that changes how the entire situation feels. Because now you're not stuck trying to accept an answer you don't like. You're working toward a better one. And that's the first major difference. One model is built to explain outcomes, the other is built to change them. Now let's talk about something you feel a lot more often than a big problem, and that's the day-to-day experience. Because most of your interactions with your insurance program aren't big claims or major issues. They're small things, certificates, questions, changes. Hey, we got a new vendor. Hey, we're doing an event. Hey, we need something turned around quickly. And this is where the structure of the model starts to show up again. On the direct side, a lot of these operations are built for efficiency, which means service is often routed through call centers, 1-800 numbers, queues, and the people you're talking to may be helpful, but they're handling a high volume of calls across a wide range of situations. So what happens? You wait. You explain your situation. You get transferred. You follow up. And for a lot of churches, this becomes one of the biggest frustrations. I've had plenty of conversations with clients who say, I didn't even necessarily want to leave because of price. I just can't deal with the service anymore. Now compare that to the broker model. You have a relationship. You have a point of contact who understands your account. So when something comes up, you're not starting from scratch every time. You're picking up where you left off. And that changes the speed, it changes the clarity, and it changes how much effort it takes on your end to get something done. So the experience here is very different. One feels like you're navigating a system, the other feels like you have someone navigating it for you. Now this next piece is really where this starts to matter for churches specifically, because most churches are not simple risks. You're not just one building with one activity. You've got services, you've got youth programs, you've got counseling, you've got events, you've got outside groups using your facility. And all of those things create different types of exposure. So the real question becomes, can the person you're working with actually build a solution around all of that? Or are they trying to fit all of that into one box? On the direct side, you're working with one product. And again, that product might be really good at certain things. But if there's a gap, if there's a limitation, if there's something it doesn't handle well, there's nowhere else to go. So what happens is you either live with that gap or you try to force a solution inside of something that wasn't designed for it. Now on the broker side, you're not limited to one toolbox. You can pull different pieces from different carriers. You can layer coverage. You can adjust based on how the church actually operates. So instead of saying, here's the box, fit into it, you're saying, here's how you operate. Let's build something around that. And this shows up in really practical ways, like how you handle outside groups using your facility, like whether your coverage actually lines up with your youth programs, like whether you have the right protection in place for higher severity risks. If the person you're working with only knows one product, they're going to have a hard time solving anything outside of that product. And that's the difference here. One model fits you into a predefined solution, the other builds a solution around your reality. Now I want to pause here for a second because this is important. This is not a broker good, direct bad conversation. There are absolutely situations where going direct makes a lot of sense. In fact, sometimes it's the best option. If your situation is relatively simple, if the product you're looking at is highly specialized and is built specifically for what you do, and if cost is a primary driver for you, the direct model can be extremely efficient. You're cutting out a layer, you're working straight with the company. And in some cases, that can lead to very competitive pricing. So this isn't about saying one is right and the other is wrong. It's about understanding the trade-off you're making, because when you go direct, what you're really choosing is simplicity and cost efficiency in exchange for flexibility, leverage, and optionality. And for some churches, that's a trade-off they're perfectly comfortable with. But for others, especially as things get more complex, that trade-off starts to matter a lot more. So at this point, the question isn't which one is better, it's which one is the right fit for you. And there are really 3 simple questions you can ask to figure that out. The first is, do you want one option or multiple options? If you're comfortable with a single carrier and you like what they offer, going direct can work just fine. But if you want to see what the broader market has to say, if you want comparison, flexibility, and the ability to pivot, then working with a broker is going to give you that. The second question is, when something goes wrong, do you want someone to explain the answer or go find you a better one? Because that's the real difference we talked about here. And the third is, how important is service and ongoing support to you? Do you want to call into a system, or do you want to call someone who already understands your situation? None of these are right or wrong answers, but being honest about them will point you very clearly in one direction or the other. Because most churches don't run into issues because they made a bad decision. They run into issues because they didn't understand the decision they were making. And if you want to make sure you're not just choosing the right path, but actually structuring your insurance in a way that avoids gaps, reduces surprises, and gives you real options when things change, I've got another video that walks through exactly how to do that. So click here, and I'll see you there. I'm Darrell Henry with Bitner Henry Insurance Group and American Church Group of North Carolina and Minnesota. Thank you so much for watching, and we serve those who serve others.